I'm with John Howard from the Methodist Liaison Office, which is based in Jerusalem. Now, John, what is the Methodist Liaison Office?
Well, the Methodist Liaison Office is the presence of the World Methodist Council within Israel-Palestine. In other words, we represent Methodists from across the world in the land of Jesus' birth. We have an office at a place called Tantur, which is an ecumenical centre, which is on the border between the West Bank and Jerusalem. Strictly speaking, it's in the West Bank as far as the Palestinians are concerned, and in Jerusalem as far as the Israelis are concerned. So we're right there in the middle, able to work in both communities, the Israeli and the Palestinian communities.
And why did you start an office there?
Over in the past, the history of missionary work across much of this area has been that different denominations made a decision that they would send missionaries to particular places. And this area was not one that the Methodist Church sent people to. We sent people to Africa, we sent people to India, we sent people lots of other places, but not to Palestine as it was then. In more recent years, if I go back about 15 years now, the American Methodist Church sent a number of people as missionaries here, but they were very much of a mind that they wanted to work with others rather than create their own congregation. And that was confirmed by the World Methodist Council. And so our office is deliberately not a congregation. We work with other churches, we preach in other churches, we support Christians in different places, particularly in Palestine and Israel, but we're not trying to set up a new congregation. We are delighted when people come to faith through our work, but we will link them then with another church rather than trying to keep them within Methodism, because we feel quite honestly there's too many churches already here in Israel-Palestine. We don't want to set up another one.
And what sort of projects do you run?
Well, again, in a sense, we don't run projects, we support projects, and particularly where there are projects that have been created by local people themselves. Some of those are in the Nazareth area around the Galilee. Most of them are in the West Bank or in Gaza. And we have about 20 projects which are financially supported by Methodist churches across the world. We keep in touch with those, and we try to make sure there's good correspondence between those who are doing some of the funding work and those who are doing the work on the ground here. Other ones, it's more that we are trying to support those who are doing very sensitive pieces of work. Tent of Nations would be a good example, where we don't fund Tent of Nations anywhere at all, but we are there from time to time, often have volunteers who we place there, or we share in leadership of devotions or things like that at a place like Tent of Nations.
Do people come here and learn about the land?
We hope that they learn about the land. We have many Methodists come on pilgrimages. And I often say to them when they come on pilgrimages that in many ways the land today is very much like it was at the time of Jesus. In the time of Jesus there was a conflict going on. It was a different conflict to the one that's going on now, but nevertheless it was a place where you saw a lot of soldiers, and soldiers didn't always behave appropriately. And we get that in the gospel story, of course, that Jesus reflects upon that, and the whole question of turning the other cheek came out of that. Well, we see that situation today. So when people come on pilgrimage, we try to encourage them to engage with Israelis and with Palestinians, and to see something of what is actually happening on the ground, so that there's greater understanding, so that their pilgrimage isn't simply seeing physical rocks on the ground, but meeting with the people, the Christian rocks, the cornerstones of faith who are here in the land.
Is this to open up the Bible for the people?
Oh, very much so. I think you can't read the Bible in the same way once you've been to the Holy Land. It's just the way in which things relate to each other. It makes so much difference. I still always wonder when I go to the Sea of Galilee and walking by the side of the Sea of Galilee, I look up at the Golan Heights and I think this is exactly what Jesus saw when he was walking in exactly the same place. And that's always an inspiration to me whenever I have the chance to do that. And I go to Tiberias and preach there. In fact, I'm there next Sunday preaching at St Andrew's Church of Scotland in Tiberias, and it's a privilege to be able to do that. But yes, so I think you do find that the Bible comes alive anew when you've engaged with the land where Jesus walked.
Do you have people who come here and love the place and decide to come and volunteer?
Certainly, that's another thing which we do in the office. We coordinate volunteers from Methodist churches. Most of them come either from the UK or from the US, but potentially we could have volunteers coming from other places. Some of those volunteers come on what we call VIM groups, Volunteers in Mission, which is a short 3 or 4 week experience where they do some pilgrimage, they do some voluntary work, and they also meet with local people and worship with local people. Some come on a up to 3 month program whereby they come and are able to get the visas at Ben Gurion Airport and spend 3 months working in different places, and our office coordinates that and supports them while they do that. Others are able to get a 1-year visa for volunteering and will volunteer for a complete year. We don't get large numbers, but most of the time we have somebody here volunteering, sometimes 2 or 3. We've got a few coming in the next few weeks.
Is it important for people who come to get to know the heart of the people, both Palestinian and Israeli?
And it's, of course, one of the challenges to be able to do that, because most people don't speak Arabic. And if you haven't got either Hebrew or Arabic, then clearly your conversations are limited. But there are ways that you get into that. And it's remarkable how many people living in Israel, Palestine, have got 2 or 3 languages, which it puts me to shame because I can only manage a little bit of Arabic and then my English. So yes, engaging with the people is so important to get a better understanding of what's happening here.
Now, you've been linking in with Christians in Nigeria. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, yes, across the world, really. I mean, we are the office of the World Methodist Council, and there's a lot of Methodists in the world these days, and Nigeria is one of our places where we have a lot of church members, Christians who've often never been to the Holy Land, and so they come and visit. But also we have groups coming from South Africa, from Korea, as well as from the United States and the UK. Indeed, I'm at present involved in discussions inviting the leader of the Methodist Church in Rwanda, who I know very well from past work. He's very much wanted to come next Easter, and trying to arrange the facilities so he can be here for next Easter. So people from across the world. Our office has communications with many, many different countries. And some of the bigger ones are places like Nigeria and South Africa and Korea.
Now, you going to Gaza, what is the situation like in Gaza?
It's very difficult. It's a heartbreaking place to be. As in so many places, the people are wonderful. I mean, you meet the people and you think, how can the situation be as difficult as it is when you have such wonderful people? Particularly when I go there, I'm particularly working with the Christian community, though we do go to the refugee camps and work with some of the people who are running centres in the refugee camps, which are predominantly Muslim. But with the Christian community, the community now is about 1,000 Christians out of 2 million people in Gaza. They suffer from exactly the same problem that everybody in Gaza of the blockade, meaning that so many facilities are limited. One example, electricity is on for 3 hours and then off for 12, then back on for 3, then off for 12, and that's for everybody. Life is very difficult for Christians, dominated by so many Muslims around them. They have good relationships from the point of view of they're not being actively persecuted, but it's difficult to develop opportunities, especially for young people from the Christian community. And they have that sense that more and more people are trying to leave when they can leave, and so the community is getting smaller. It's difficult. There are some wonderful Christians who are quite inspirational. They've got some wonderful leaders of the churches there. There are only a few churches there, Roman Catholic Church, Orthodox and Baptist churches, and they are doing some good work. Their impact upon the people of Gaza is hugely more than the size of their community, running hospitals, clinics, schools and so on. They're doing wonderful work from that point of view, but they're in a situation that is desperate.
With all the desperate situation, are they still standing strong spiritually?
They are. You hear in my voice a hesitation because it is so difficult in their situation. They maintain a hope, which is in a sense a hope against hope. There is no sight, you can't see how the situation is going to change for the better. You can only see it getting worse. So there's one, in a sense, rational, intellectual level. You look at it and you say, this is awful and how can it improve? But in their heart, they have that trust in the God that will always come into a situation and give new hope. And so they maintain that hope through their own spiritual life, rather than through any rational examination of the hopes politically for the future of Gaza.
Do they have a lot of fear?
Yes, in certain respects. I remember talking to one person who said to me his 5-year-old child has been through 3 wars. And when you've been through 3 wars and you've seen buildings, shelled, and you've seen missiles hitting buildings, and there's always a level of fear. Last week I was in Gaza and we went to the beach with a family, and it was wonderful sitting on the beach with them and looking out to sea as the sun set. It was wonderful. And then suddenly there was a loud bang, loud crash. Everybody on the beach jumped and looked round and wondered what it was. We never knew what it was. It was very loud. No idea what it was, but just the way people reacted, you could see there was an underlying tension that everybody was living with. Again, everybody is saying there will be another Gaza war. It's just a matter of when.
If the Christian community in Gaza could leave, would they all leave, or would they still stay there and be a light and witness and testimony?
That's very difficult to answer. I had a very good conversation with one particular person. I won't name him because it could be awkward for him. He was saying that he's spent most of his life supporting people staying in Gaza. But as he looks to his children growing up in the situation, as a family, they feel if only they could leave. And so get caught in that dilemma. He feels his Christian vocation, his calling from God, is to stay there and to work with the people. And yet he says, has he got the right to inflict upon his children the kind of experience he's had over the last few years? That's a difficult dilemma to live with.
And it's difficult because it's your family as well, isn't it?
It is, absolutely, yes. Yes, because you have a Christian duty to care for your family. And to what extent do you feel inevitably that as your house gets shelled or your neighbour's house gets shelled, how much are you looking for your family if you're putting them in that situation? It's a very difficult dilemma to live with.
Do you get the chance to travel throughout the Middle East?
I'm very fortunate from that point of view. I mean, I have to keep reminding myself that so many people I live amongst don't have the privilege that I have. I mean, I've got a British passport. I can travel into Israel whenever I want to. I don't have to get a permit. I go into Jordan, go into Lebanon. And yes, I have those opportunities. So I can meet with people in different places. And as you travel in this area, you're reminded constantly that, of course, though we divided up into different countries, historically this whole area related to each other. Paul was on the road to Damascus when he had his conversion experience, and that's not a long way. From Jerusalem to Amman, if you didn't have to go through the Allenby Bridge, you could drive it an hour and a half. You can see the lights of Amman from Jerusalem. So these places are not a long way apart. This is one very limited piece of land. I was saying to an American this morning I was talking to, I said that one of the states of the USA covers the whole of the area of Middle East in geographical space. This is not a large area. So when you travel in this area, you're reminded that, for example, the Christians in Syria, who are having an absolutely appalling time at present, are the brothers and sisters of people living here in Bethlehem. The relationships that exist between Christian communities around the Middle East are close ones. So when one part of that community hurts, the whole of the community hurts. And people get concerned and indeed develop fears because of what's happening elsewhere in this Middle East. So I feel very privileged to be able to travel in that kind of way. It's also heartbreaking. I was in the Bekaa Valley 2 weeks ago, and to see the huge number of refugees, some in official refugee camps, others just squatting, having put tents up in a spare little bit of land. They haven't registered as refugees, but they've fled from their country because of what's happening, and now they're trying to eke out an existence as best that they can. It's heart-rending to see the situation. It is. We don't get the picture of it in the Western media. We don't see just how bad the situation is, how desperate in Syria and the Bekaa Valley, which borders with Syria.
Why do you do what you do?
I feel called to it. I do feel God has called me to this place. The Methodist Church, through its processes, tested that calling, and I find myself here. There are times when I could willingly leave, and my wife is in England still, and She comes here from time to time and shares with me, but sometimes it feels very attractive to go back to England and to be with the children and grandchildren and so on. But for the moment, I do believe very deeply that God has called me to this work, and I'm trying to do my best to respond to that call.
And what's your prayer for the Middle East?
Well, of course, for peace. But I think we have to say it has to be a peace founded upon justice, a peace founded upon equal human rights, a peace where every person is respected for the people that they are. They're all God's children. And we pray that the time will come before too long when we will have a peace that really is founded upon justice.
Okay, John, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Good to talk to you.